The Middle East has entered one of the most dangerous periods in decades as a rapidly escalating war between Iran, Israel, and the United States continues to reshape regional security and global energy markets. The conflict, which began with a massive military strike on February 28, 2026, has spread across multiple countries, drawn in allied forces, and raised fears of a broader regional confrontation. At the center of the crisis are escalating missile exchanges, strategic strikes on military infrastructure, and mounting international diplomatic efforts aimed at preventing the war from spiraling further out of control. The current conflict erupted on February 28 when Israel and the United States launched coordinated air and missile strikes across Iran in what was described as a preemptive military campaign. The operation targeted Iranian military bases, missile facilities, nuclear infrastructure, and leadership compounds. The attacks represented one of the most dramatic military escalations in the region in recent history. One of the most consequential outcomes of the opening strikes was the death of Iran's longtime supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. His killing stunned observers around the world and plunged the Iranian political system into uncertainty. Iranian state media confirmed the death and declared a period of national mourning. Alongside him, several high-ranking military commanders and political leaders were also reportedly killed during the strikes. The loss of such senior leadership created an immediate vacuum within Iran's power structure at a moment when the country was facing an unprecedented military assault. Analysts warned that the absence of long-established leadership figures could make decision-making within Iran more unpredictable as the conflict intensified. Iran responded swiftly and forcefully. Within hours of the initial strikes, waves of Iranian ballistic missiles and drones were launched toward Israel and at United States military installations across the Middle East. Targets included bases in Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, and other locations hosting American forces. Missiles fired from Iranian territory and from allied groups also struck Israeli cities, triggering air defense systems and forcing civilians into shelters. These retaliatory attacks demonstrated that despite the heavy damage inflicted during the opening phase of the war, Iran retained the ability to strike targets across a wide geographic area. The region quickly found itself engulfed in a cycle of strikes and counterstrikes. Military installations, energy infrastructure, and strategic facilities became frequent targets as both sides sought to weaken the other's capabilities. As the war entered its third week, another critical front began to emerge in the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow waterway is one of the most important energy corridors in the world, responsible for transporting roughly 1/5 of global oil shipments. Iran began targeting vessels and threatening shipping traffic moving through the strait, raising fears of a major disruption to global energy supplies. The move immediately triggered alarm across international markets, as any prolonged closure of the strait could have severe consequences for the world economy. The United States responded by striking Iranian maritime facilities, including sites connected to naval operations and oil export infrastructure. Among the most significant targets was Karg Island, home to Iran's most important oil export terminal. The attacks were intended to reduce Iran's ability to disrupt shipping and to prevent the deployment of naval mines in the vital shipping lanes. Despite these efforts, the conflict's spillover into maritime territory has significantly increased the risk of further escalation. The economic consequences have already begun to ripple across the globe. Oil prices surged sharply following the escalation as traders reacted to the growing uncertainty surrounding energy supplies from the region. Governments and international institutions have begun discussing emergency measures to stabilize markets should the conflict continue.
Amid the ongoing military exchanges, Iran's leadership has begun sending signals that it may be open to negotiations under specific conditions. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian recently engaged in discussions with several international leaders in an effort to explore diplomatic options.
In a public statement following conversations with foreign leaders, Pezeshkian outlined Tehran's conditions for ending the conflict. Masoud Pezeshkian said, "I reaffirmed Iran's commitment to peace in the region. The only way to end this war ignited by the Zionist regime in U.S. is recognizing Iran's legitimate rights, payment of reparations, and firm international guarantees against future aggression." The statement reflected Iran's insistence that any settlement must include recognition of its strategic interests and compensation for damages caused during the war. Tehran also demanded assurances that future attacks would not occur. Diplomatic efforts have intensified as major powers attempt to prevent the conflict from spiraling further. Russia has emerged as one of the key international actors seeking to mediate the crisis. The Kremlin has maintained close contact with Iranian leadership while urging restraint from all sides. In a notable development, Russian President Vladimir Putin reportedly held a telephone conversation with U.S. President Donald Trump to discuss proposals aimed at ending the war through diplomatic channels. According to Russian officials, the conversation lasted roughly an hour and focused on potential strategies to reduce tensions and create space for negotiations. Although details of the discussion have not been publicly disclosed, the exchange highlighted growing international concern about the conflict's consequences. Israel has also indicated that the war has entered a critical stage. Israeli leadership has framed the conflict as a decisive moment in its long-running confrontation with Iran. Israel's defense minister said, "We are entering the decisive phase of the struggle between the regime's attempts to survive while causing increasing suffering to the Iranian people and surrender." He continued by emphasizing that the ultimate outcome of the conflict could depend on internal dynamics within Iran. Israel's defense minister added, "Only the Iranian people can put an end to this in a determined struggle until the terrorist regime is overthrown and Iran is saved." These remarks underscored Israel's belief that weakening Iran's leadership and military infrastructure is essential to ensuring long-term security. The United States has played a central role in the conflict since its earliest stages. President Donald Trump has publicly defended the military campaign, describing it as necessary to eliminate what he characterized as a growing threat from Iran. During remarks about the ongoing operations, Trump described the campaign in emphatic terms. Donald Trump said, "And as we take decisive action to stop the threat posed by the terrorist regime in Iran with Operation Epic Fury," he also reflected on the naming of the operation.
Donald Trump said, "Is that a great name?" Well, it's only good if you win. You know, you can only do, and we've won. Let me tell you, we've won. Trump suggested that Iranian forces were caught completely off guard by the sudden assault. Donald Trump said, they don't know what the hell hit them, right? They don't know what hit.
They got hit by the American military. The president has repeatedly claimed that U.S. forces inflicted devastating damage on Iran's military infrastructure during the initial phase of the war. Donald Trump said over the past 11 days, our military has virtually destroyed Iran. He continued by describing what he said was the rapid destruction of Iran's air power. Donald Trump said their air force is gone, totally gone. Trump also claimed that Iran's defensive systems had been eliminated.
Donald Trump said they no longer have radar, they don't have anti-aircraft equipment, they don't have anything. According to the president, Iranian missile and drone capabilities have also been severely degraded. Donald Trump said their missiles are down 90%. Their drones are down 85%. Another major element of the U.S. campaign was an attack targeting Iran's nuclear infrastructure.
Donald Trump said, as well as Operation Midnight Hammer, where we totally obliterated Iran's nuclear potential. He emphasized that the strike had eliminated what he described as Iran's nuclear ambitions. Donald Trump said, we obliterated it. They don't have nuclear potential. The conflict has also expanded into naval confrontations in the Persian Gulf. Iran has attempted to disrupt shipping routes by laying naval mines in strategic waters. Trump described the effort during remarks about maritime security. Donald Trump said they wanted to drop some mines so boats blow up. He claimed that U.S. forces responded by destroying much of Iran's naval capability. Donald Trump said we knocked out their Navy. In addition to naval clashes, the conflict has produced direct attacks on U.S. military facilities across the region. One of the most alarming developments occurred when Iranian forces launched a missile and drone attack on a U.S. military installation in Kuwait. According to Iranian claims, the strike targeted a helicopter base and caused significant damage to infrastructure. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps reported that the attack killed several American soldiers and wounded more than 100 personnel. Iranian media later released footage that it claimed showed the moment the missiles were launched. According to those reports, the strike hit repair hangars, fuel storage facilities, and other structures used by a U.S. Army aviation unit stationed at the base. Although the full extent of casualties has not been independently confirmed, the incident highlights Iran's ability to target American military installations across the Gulf region. The war has already produced devastating humanitarian consequences. Civilian casualties have been reported in several countries, including Iran, Israel, and Lebanon. Air raid sirens, missile interceptions, and explosions have become daily realities for millions of people living across the region. Families have been forced into shelters as governments struggle to protect civilian populations from the ongoing attacks. In Lebanon, clashes between Israeli forces and the Iran-backed Hezbollah group have further intensified the regional dimension of the war. Hundreds of people have reportedly been killed and many more displaced as fighting spreads across border areas. Beyond the immediate battlefield, the war's economic impact is being felt worldwide. Energy markets have reacted sharply to the escalating violence in one of the world's most important oil-producing regions. Prices for crude oil surged as traders feared disruptions to shipping routes and production facilities. Economists warn that if the Strait of Hormuz remains unstable, the consequences could include rising inflation and economic instability in many countries. As the conflict continues into its third week, the path forward remains uncertain. Military operations remain intense, yet diplomatic channels are quietly working behind the scenes to explore possible solutions. Both sides appear determined to maintain military pressure while leaving open the possibility of negotiations. For now, however, the Middle East remains locked in a dangerous confrontation that could reshape the region's political and strategic landscape for years to come. The coming days may determine whether the conflict expands even further or whether international diplomacy succeeds in steering the region away from an even larger war.